Cam Johnson is obviously one of those players that it's consistently being brought up in trade talks. What do you think the Brooklyn Nets should do with him? Do you think they should just keep him and see what he be? I mean, I feel like we know what he is. We know what he probably is going to be for the rest of his career. Do you think they should trade him and get some assets, or do you think they should just stick it out with him and see what can come of that roster?
Uh, I would trade him.
Yeah, me too.
I would trade D'Lo. I would trade D'Lo and Cam Johnson just because I think they're aging, and I think this is the maximum value you're gonna get.
Hmm.
Which is like I hate to say that, but like where like you said that just because you have $60 million in cap room, you have a lot of picks for the next couple of years, and like you don't really know like you need to figure out a direction for your team. Like you
Right.
either need to draft a franchise player or you need to burn it all down. And I think what's going on, Three Man Weave family? It's your boy ZD with the lovely co-host CJ, and we're in the building coming at you guys live on a Saturday. It's June 28th. Feeling great, man. The draft just ended up getting done. We obviously had the Thunder win the championship. You know, CJ's repping the hat right now. Hey, CJ, how you feel about that, man? For the haters out there talking, on the
Man,
Thunder, say something.
honestly, bro, I don't care. It is what it is. It could be an asterisk next to for y'all, but in my eyes, it's a championship. We're gonna go down in history, and we just witnessed one of the best teams of our generation. So
Yeah.
I don't have much to say, honestly.
Hey, I don't know if you saw, but there was a Jimmy High Roller video on it.
I did
One of the best seasons of all
all
time.
time.
But hey, we're here to talk about the draft with you guys. Get into the Brooklyn Next off-season files, which is going to be turned as well. But yeah, man, I'm doing good. Coming at you guys. We haven't recorded in a little minute, CJ, but
Yeah,
I'm excited, man. We're gonna get into it. Obviously, this draft was it was crazy. I would say, like,
yeah.
it was. We had some pretty crazy twists and turns, ups and downs. Obviously we know who won the lottery, so we know that lucky number one pick obviously had to be Cooper Flag, but we'll get right into it, man. The Dallas Mavericks selected Cooper Flag with the number one overall pick. I mean, what more can you say, dude? Like I said, I posted something on TikTok, but talking about it a little
Check it
bit,
out.
but
Go follow us on Three
uh,
Man Weave on TikTok.
yeah, go follow us, man. Go follow us on Three Man Weave for sure. But yeah, man, Cooper Flag just Wooden Player of the Year award as a freshman. Like I said, he was averaging 19, 8, and 5. And to do that as a defensive menace as well, I think that's really what makes him special is he's a two-way superstar. You guys probably seen some highlights of him hooping at Duke, dunking on cats, whatever. CJ and I have been trying to keep up with some of the college ball as well as NBA. So we saw Cooper Flag in front and center. And there's no doubt the New Balance deal talked about his NIL money as well. But I think it's just cool he's from Newport, Maine, bro.
Yeah.
Just repping. Like you said, you didn't know that he had reclassified and actually went up. But
Hmm.
it was interesting. He had this thing that he was talking about kind of during his post draft little interview, and he was talking about how his mom tell him like, if you're the best in the gym, you need to find a new gym. And I think that says a lot about Cooper Flag and the type of player that he is. And so, the Dallas Mavericks were going to take him, bro. I think, like I said, just a defensive menace and obviously all those offensive statistics, but just the blocks and the rebounding. And I think his defense is what the Mavericks are most excited about. And
Yep.
he fits right alongside like Kyrie Irving and AD. I mean, those guys are older, so they definitely need somebody who has more legs, more bounce, just has a little bit more energy. Because to be honest, those dudes have been playing over 10 plus years. Like there's miles on their body for sure. And I
Hmm.
think Cooper Flag's going to give them fresh set of legs, be that jumpy kind of glue guy. They said his player comp was a Kawhi Leonard type of player, which is high praise from some of the best analysts in the world. So
Yeah.
yeah, bro, Cooper Flag is like, yeah, he deserves all of it, man. I think he's been able to withstand the pressure and be a guy people can count on all the way back in high school. Obviously it transitioned to Duke and now hopefully it transitions to the NBA. But you're probably looking at the rookie of the year right there. Most likely he'll get the most opportunities, the most usage, most minutes. Jason Kidd had a press conference as well and said, kind of jokingly, but I think seriously, like we're gonna put him at the point
Point
guard
guard.
and see what he can do. And I don't think that's a joke because of Kyrie's injury. And yeah, just super excited to see what Cooper Flag can bring. Obviously, we we've talked about him more than anybody else on this pod, I would say. So I'm excited to talk about the other guys. But it was dope to see what me and you both knew was going to happen. So
Right.
seeing Kenny talk about it, Brian. I actually watched the flip of the draft because they had the one on ESPN, which honestly, y'all got to step your game up. The ESPN presentation is weak, bro.
Yeah.
I'm gonna keep it real. Like, I know we don't get paid from this yet, but I think you guys can do a better job of making it more fun, especially for like the younger kids. That's what Kenny and Brian were doing. Like, they were trying to be more engaging and talking about different things, and so that's what I like. So I was actually watching an alternate showing of the draft, but neither here nor there. Cooper Flag, number one overall pick, man.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts, CJ?
Yeah, man, it's cool, like you said, we've been trying to keep up with obviously NBA, but college, I was talking to you about it, and I've talked to Cam and Carlos about it pretty much all season. It's a lot to keep up with, but obviously throughout the whole college basketball season, we kind of knew he was going to be, obviously, that it was pretty much the flag race all season, and kind of just seeing what he was in college, being able to win the Naismith Player of the Year, and I think we did a little trivia about it. He's one of 4 or 5 freshmen to ever do that. Yeah, so
Yeah,
it's
that doesn't happen.
that doesn't happen a lot, and just kind of seeing what he's been able to become, and we've seen him throughout high school. We saw what he did at Montvert, and just kind of translating to the college basketball. And I think, like you said, just his comp of Kawhi, I like that, because he's pretty good on the defensive side, but he's also, I would say, he's a lot more polished than Kawhi offensively, but defensively, I would say coming out of college probably is a great comp, just because of he can pretty much guard essentially 1 through 5, really. He's a taller guy. He's 6'8", and he's not like scrawny or anything. He could punch it. He could score from the mid range, play make. It's pretty much what was all the talks about him throughout the whole season is pretty much what he showed us this whole college basketball season. So super excited to see what he can be for the Mavs. I mean, like you said before we started, Nico Harrison gets saved again, and we talked about it throughout the pod when we reacted to them getting the number 1 pick. It's kind of his dream scenario. He says defense wins championships, and with this type of player, I mean, it's going in the right direction, especially with, like you said, the team that the Mavs have right now. They're a little older, getting a younger guy that you could essentially be your corner piece for the future. Whatever happens to AD, whatever ends up happening to Kyrie, I mean, I don't know what the Mavs are going to do, but I would assume they're probably going to keep him. But I thought they were going to keep Luka as well. But that's besides the point. Cooper Flag, I'm super excited to see what he could do in the league, man. Because I think he's, obviously there might be a little bit of a dip off in production, but I think what he provides on the defensive side of the ball is going to be kind of what he holds his hat high on. He's going to be kind of like, not a stopper, but a great wing forward that can, like I said, guard pretty much all positions. So super excited to see what he can do. Like you said, we've talked about him all season long, and this was the flag race, and the Mavs were able to capture the flag. And I know that there's hope in Dallas now, man. I see a lot of Dallas fans reposting. Shout out to Alex, reposting it on their story. So there's a joy in the Dallas organization, and it's dope, man. Obviously not a Dallas fan. I went to Game 6 last year. I went through that, so still kind of rubs me the wrong way, but it's always great seeing, after all that they've been through, they're able to get their guy and, potentially, one of their best players in franchise history. So we'll see. I'm excited for this upcoming season to see what he could become. And, like you said, it's just kind of it's kind of not downplaying his game, because, he's a fantastic player, but he kind of has done what we were expecting him to be. So
yeah, he was the like you said, the runaway guy here. Mm-hmm. I think you said to capture the flag. I like that, but just a special dude. I think for me, I think he's gonna average 15, 4 and 4 with like good defensive stats. Yeah. So watch out, man.
Yeah,
that's gonna
maybe
be
like 3 stocks type of thing.
Yeah, bro. Like, that's gonna be good for a rookie, like CJ's saying, especially at his age.
Yeah,
think about that, man. Like, that's shout out Cooper Flag, bro. We got you, man. But But yeah, moving right along, I think we talked about this dude for a second too on this pod. So
Mm-hmm.
uh, you guys are no stranger, but the San Antonio Spurs selected Dylan Harper with the second overall pick. Um, Me and CJ talked about this a little bit earlier off the pod, but this was like a no brainer here as well. This is the second best guy in this draft. Just a super crafty lefty who got to his spots, almost shot 50% from the floor, playing alongside Ace Bailey, who's another killer as well. For me, what's so special about Dylan Harper is just his ability to create his own shot. The San Antonio Spurs are building something, man. Just putting pieces, like I said on TikTok, around Wemby, and that's all that they can do. I think when you have a guy, this is, what's interesting is like obviously they didn't have Wemby, it would be a completely different situation. They're going to try to choose, but having that franchise player makes it very easy to pick guys depending on what they're good at to help that dude be great
Mm-hmm.
and obviously bring San Antonio another championship. So I think Dylan Harper is that dude. Again, like I said, super crafty, has a great handle. Needs to work on his outside shot a little bit, but great at finishing and just like I said, he almost shot 50% from the field, so he's a pretty consistent scorer. And yeah, he's already proven that he can do it in high school and it translated to the college level. And I think for me and CJ both, what was dope is he went to Rutgers, having offers from everywhere in the country. Just says a lot about where his head is at and where he wants to be. I mean, I don't think he really cares about the lights, camera, action. He just wants to hoop. So San Antonio is the perfect spot for that.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that they're a known market, but definitely smaller. San Antonio is a big city for sure, but they love their hoops there, man. I think San Antonio faithful knows like that's when you go there, all they do is talk about the Spurs. They got the Wemby mural there, so um, yeah, it was dope to see Dylan Harper go second overall. I think he had a good run at Rutgers, but definitely was going to be a one and done from the jump. And yeah, I think this was another no brainer. I wasn't surprised with this pick as well. Both of these came in pretty quickly when I was watching. Like they got the pick in pretty quick, and I was like, all right, like that makes sense. They didn't take that long because you know how it shows you the timer. It's like beep
Yeah.
and deep down, I'm like, ooh. But yeah, Dylan Harper, bro, for
Yep.
sure, man. Super cold. I think he's gonna be great with De'Aaron Fox. Obviously De'Aaron Fox got hurt, but we'll talk about another dude who they drafted, but Jeremy Sohan, Wemby, obviously, HB. They got some vets on that team, so we'll see, man. I'm excited for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. No, bro, you said it perfectly. Dylan Harper, obviously, easily the second best player in this draft, just what he's able to do on the offense side of the ball. And, like I said, I wasn't really watching all games, so I can't really speak on him on the defensive side of the ball. But just whenever I would see highlights and, clips of him, it was like, it was easy for him. I like wouldn't compare him to James Harden per se, but I feel like that's like the type of mold that he is, getting to his spots, probably not as great of a shooter, but just a scorer, and
Yeah,
I think he was averaging what you said, like 5 assists a game, right? Like
yeah.
he can
19 points.
19,
Yeah.
yeah, damn near 20. It was like 19.8 or something like that,
Yeah,
So
like 20, bro.
what he was able to do, just obviously Rutgers, weren't able to make the NCAA tournament, but I
Yeah,
think
they weren't the best,
I think it just kind of goes to show just the talent that he is, and super
bro.
excited to see what he's gonna be for the Spurs. Obviously, they have, I wouldn't say a log jam at the guard position, but they have De'Aaron Fox. They have the previous two rookies of the year, but Stephon Castle.
Stephon Castle,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
So it's figuring out where to put him. I think I think we've had this discussion all the time. Fit versus best available, and I'm usually a fit guy, but I think just with this draft, it seemed like it was pretty guard heavy for the most part. At least that top end of the talent, like VJ Edgecombe. We're gonna talk about him next,
No,
but
right.
all these players are guards or like guard slash forwards that could probably play 2 through 4 type of vibe. And I think just with what they have going, they have Wemby, like you said, and it's such a privilege to have a player of his
Privilege.
caliber, and
Yep,
just
that's the
seeing
word.
what he can be for them. It's You don't really need that much when he's on the
Yeah,
court. You just need someone that
no, for
could,
sure.
that's kind of what they're missing. Obviously they have, like I said, Stephon Castle, De'Aaron Fox, but just kind of, whatever he is gonna be for them. I feel like he's probably gonna more so probably come off the bench this first season. Maybe even, he might get starter minutes whenever someone gets injured or whatnot. But just what he can provide for them on the offensive side of the ball, being a shot creator, and also just a scorer, man. That's kind of what they were missing, off of their bench. They had Chris Paul this past season, which was their backup, but I think what they got, man, like you said, it was the best available, and for this draft specifically, I think this was the perfect pick for them. Like all the other, I think we were also talking about it a while ago. Like actually, when every all the draft lottery kind of the cards got dealt to the teams,
Yeah,
and
they got
we were talking.
turned over.
Yeah, we were talking about it, and I remember you were saying like a player like Malawa would be a great fit with them, and that would have also been taking him at 2 might have been a little bit
A
of a
reach.
reach. So I
Yeah, it's a
understand
reach.
why they took Dylan Harper. He's kind of more of a polished player. You know what you're probably
Polished,
gonna
right.
get out of him, and it's something that they needed. So super excited. I know Los is gassed. I told him, I was like, man,
Yeah.
y'all are. I've been telling him this. I've been telling him like, hey, give it a couple years, bro. Y'all are getting there. Obviously when y'all hit the lotto with Wemby, but these picks that y'all are getting and y'all develop talent super well, it's hard to count y'all out any year. So especially with a player like this and just what they've been able, the acquisitions that they've been able to acquire, it's gonna be. The West is a bloodbath, bro. It's been a bloodbath, and it's only gotten even crazier with these
Yeah.
with this draft. So shout out
Like you
Dylan Harper,
said,
bro.
Dylan Harper. Yeah, like both of those guys went to Western Conference teams, which is just unhealthy.
Yeah.
Um, but like CJ just said, just like unreal that the West continues to get better and better. But yeah, shout out Dylan Harper, bro. Like I said, to me, he's the best scorer in this draft. Like pure scorer, even better than Ace Bailey. Like to me, what I've seen, I think Ace Bailey's kind of inefficient. I think he can get to it, hit some contested shots. He does what people like to see.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Dylan Harper's a
You
lot
think he's a better
craftier.
scorer than Trey Johnson?
Yeah, yeah.
Fair.
I'm not gonna lie.
Fair.
We'll talk about Trey in a
Yeah,
second
we'll talk about
because
him.
he's coming up.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think the Wizards too.
Yeah, bro.
So,
Yeah,
yeah, all right.
yeah, yeah. They're
We're going
cooking.
into our next guy, man. None other than BJ Edgecombe, like CJ just brought up, from Bimini, Bahamas,
Mm-hmm.
and Baylor University, right?
Mm-hmm.
Super athletic dude. I think this dude to me is probably the best athlete at the guard position. I think Philly, we talked about it before we got on the pod, but Daryl Morey knew here, like, hey, man, we got the third pick. We can't screw this up. I love that he went with a guard and an athletic one at that. I think he's perfect running mate for Tyrese Maxey.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be honest with you, I think Paul George is a bit washed. I think Morey sees that a little bit more so than Embiid. And I think VJ Edgecombe fits their timeline perfectly. Just he needs to improve his outside shooting. Again, he can knock down an open three, but for me, it's just his athleticism, his finishing, and his want to defend, bro. They need people who can guard on the Philadelphia 76ers. And I think VJ Edgecombe has the chance to be an all defensive type of guy. Truly, if he buys in on the defensive end, I
Mm-hmm.
think he has the athleticism, the skill to be able to do so. So I think they've got a two-way aggressive player in VJ Edgecombe. Again, man, just iron sharpens iron. He used to go at Cooper Flag in high school. I'm sure they got that on the board that he's not afraid of a challenge, and that's really important. You don't want to be drafting guys who are soft. I think VJ Edgecombe comes from the dark as well. His mom, he spoke about how thankful that he was to get drafted in the NBA because where he comes from. So shout out to VJ Edgecombe, man. I know the Bahamas have been Buddy Hield, DeAndre Ayton, but this dude was killing everybody in the World Cup. So I think that's kind of where his name got put on notice, man, is when he was hooping for the Bahamas there. So shout out VJ, man. I think the Sixers did not miss with this one. This is another, again, guard, super athletic, can dunk on you, bro, if you're not careful. Yeah, I think he had a great year this past year. I want to say he was one of the better scorers in the draft as well. So shout out VJ.
Yeah, yeah. Like you said, probably the most athletic player in this draft in my eyes as well. Just what like I said, wasn't watching as much college hoops, but the game I watched in the tournament, just he
Yeah, yeah.
I think I compared him a little bit to Ant. Not as polished on the offensive side. Really, probably what Ant was coming out of Georgia. I think that is kind of what VJ is. I see a little bit of that in him. A little not undersized, but 6'4", stockier build, and like I said, jumping out of the gym, he could pretty much dunk over everyone. And just what he's been, like you said, if he can And that's the thing. A lot of NBA players or a lot of kids in college that are about to make it to the league. They might specialize one thing in college, but when they get to the league, it's a different game. So you kind of have to
Right,
figure
yeah,
out where you could fit in. And I think with his athletic ability, his size and just kind of the type of player he is, if he can lock in defensively, I think he can be like you said, like one of the better defenders in this league just off of athletic ability alone. And if he could, develop a consistent 3-point shot, and we kind of saw what his ability to get to the rim too. When you're more than likely the most athletic player on the court, majority of the time, it's kind of easy for you to get to it. Just kind of seeing what he can become, and like you said, just what for the Sixers, another person getting the best available. They have, like I said, wouldn't
yeah,
say a log jam, but they have Quentin Grimes, Tyrese Maxey, Jerry McCain. Those are three guards right there. So trying to figure out where he could fit into that, might be a little dicey, but they have a lot of injuries. They have Paul George as well, like you said, and I think if he can, for me, what I want to see from him this upcoming season is just work on your defensive game. If you could come off the bench, or even if you get starter minutes, kind of be like a spark plug. Get stops. You don't have to get 2 steals a game or whatever, but if you could just hold your defender to a low shooting percentage or something, like little things.
exactly.
And then obviously what he can provide on the offensive side. I think it was, like you said, just off of this draft alone, that was probably. I mean, obviously you could have talked about it, Ace and those type of players, but I think just what they need, just trying to get talent and get the best available. He was hands down, the best
Yeah,
best
gotta go
athlete.
with,
So you got to go with that.
yeah, for sure. And he's probably the best straight line driver in the draft, bro.
Mm-hmm.
Just like straight,
Mm-hmm.
like going to, like you're saying, going to the bucket, figuring it out. So yeah, I'm excited. I think that's a good pick. Again, I know they have faith in Joel Embiid. They've waited a long time, to be at the top of the draft again and not have a horrible team behind them. And I think they're in that situation, funnily enough. And yeah, they got Daryl Morey. I think he hit on that was so far. I think all three of these picks are A.
Yeah.
Even though it's not like their best fit, I think like clearly all three of these teams won. But rolling right into the fourth pick, man, this is another great pick. I would say an A pick. Con Canupo out of Duke University going to the Charlotte Hornets, selected fourth overall. And yeah, man, I mean, probably the best shooter in this draft, shot 41% from deep in college last year. Was his running mate Cooper Flag. Obviously, those dudes were going at it the entire year, just killing opposing defenders, man. But for me, I think it's just his ability to be. He's always ready to shoot on the catch. That's another kind of underrated thing that I know GMs are looking at. He's always ready to shoot. And I know the Hornets. We talked about this off camera, but this is one where it's like best available and best fit.
Yeah.
LaMelo Ball, Brandon Miller, those are very ball dominant guys who like to pound the rock, high usage dudes. Concanapple can immediately come in, take maybe 15 to 20 dribbles a game,
Yeah.
and still get you 15 to 18 points, depending on if he hits his threes or not. And that's a big deal, especially for that young team. And again, they got Trey Mann, like they got some killers on that squad. So I think, Concanapple is going to be able to get 20, 25 minutes from day one. And yeah, bro, just super brings a lot of size. Again, he's taller. He's a bigger forward. He's not going to be playing the guard position, so that's going to be good. And just shooting, grit. I think he's one of the better hustlers we have in the draft. Does the dirty work, but for me, it's just his shooting ability, and I think that's what did it for the Hornets. His ability to be able to shoot the ball and not dribble the air out of it, because that's what everybody wants to do. And honestly, those three dudes we just mentioned, VJ, Dylan Harper, Cooper Flag, they're probably going to get more opportunities that are created from themselves. Whereas I see Concanapple just LaMelo Ball in the corner,
Spot up. Yeah.
like
Mm-hmm.
spot up wet.
Yeah.
Like come on now.
100%.
I like that. Like when I saw that, I was like, yeah, Charlotte. We've talked about this too. They have hope.
Yeah.
I think they know what they're doing as well. They've had some misses in the draft. Book Knight. Some other guys, but they've had some good hits too. I'd say LaMelo Ball being the most famous, but Brandon Miller, I think Concanapple is right up there as well
Yeah.
for the last 5 years for that.
Yeah, bro. You said it again perfectly. I feel like that was best available for them. Obviously, Ace up there as well, top. But I think just for the type of player that Con Kneppel is, fit them perfectly. He's a perfect
Yeah,
plug
exactly.
and play wing that is kind of what they're missing. They don't have that consistent 3-point shooter that they can rely on besides LaMelo and Brandon Miller. But when you have a
Clear.
player like that that can if like you said, a lot of the shots that are probably going to be created for him are going to be off of the LaMelo or Brandon Miller drives to the basket kick out, and that's probably going to be knocked down. Like you said, he's probably the best shooter in this draft, and I think the thing that I was very impressed with was whenever Cooper Flag went down. I think he was injured in the ACC tournament. He kind of took the role of being like an initiator as well. I feel like that's the thing that with his game is kind of underrated. I feel like whenever he needs to be, he can be able to be that type of player for you as well. So seeing that
Yeah.
type of player where they could create for themselves or they can be a spot up shooter, that's exactly what they're missing. So like you said, the Hornets, you've been doing pretty well these past, like you said, 4 or 5 years on the draft and figuring out where they're trying to build. And obviously with LaMelo and Brandon Miller, high scoring offense, why not get another guy that can score that? And he's also a pretty decent defender as well, like you said, not a small guard. He has a good frame, and he's only gonna get stronger. So I feel like that was a perfect fit for them, and he's probably gonna be starting off rip. To be honest, I feel like that's the type
Yeah.
of player he is. He's super smart, like you said, gritty type of player. Yeah, and that was I saw that pick. I know some people might not have liked that, but me personally, I was like, that's exactly what they needed. I saw what he was
That's a
able
good
to
pick.
do in this past college basketball season, and he's a lights out shooter, bro. So
Yeah.
excited to see what
No,
he can be.
no, yeah, no bad picks yet.
Mm-hmm.
We'll talk about it. But you want or yeah, next guy controversial, probably the most controversial player in the draft. Uh, just the pre-draft process was a mess. I think his representation's interesting, but it's none other than Ace Boogie Bailey out of Rutgers University, going fifth overall to the Utah Jazz. Who we talked about Austin Age, man, and Will Hardy and what they're trying to build over there. And I like this here. I think it's risky. It's risky for sure. He comes with some baggage. I know he does. His camp is definitely interesting. He wants I guess what was said supposedly is they needed Ace to come in and immediately be the guy. Utah has Lowry Marketing, so like his camp wasn't feeling like he'd be able to get enough touches. I think that's BS, man. I think Ace Bailey's going to come in from day one and be able to get as many shots up as he needs to. I think the Jazz are still going to suck. Um, I don't think he changes like their season next year, but what he does do is he gives them another forward who's not Lowry Marketing who can score in a different way. I think they're guard heavy right now. Trade Sexton, but Keontae George, Collier, Sexton, like I think who else is a guard on the Jazz?
Clarkson.
They have one more. Yeah, JC. So those dudes, those four guys are probably going to be running the obviously the at the guards positions, but the Jazz don't have any other forwards that can be scoring the ball outside of Lowry Market, and I think that's why they picked Ace Bailey. Is he's the best contested shooter in this draft? So I mean, I'd say he's got the dead eye, as the kids like to say it, and I think he was averaging 19, 20 as well. One of the best scorers that we have in college basketball. So his efficiency for me was, at times he definitely was a chucker, but I
Mm-hmm.
think bro, at his size to be able to get to his spots. His comp is supposedly KD. I'm not going to give him because I don't know if I feel like doing that, just tossing that name out there. But he definitely has those types of capabilities to be able to really lean into his ISO game and go get you a bucket. And I think that's what the Jazz need, bro. Like
Mm-hmm.
even if you shoot 43%, I think is what he was shooting this season. So if he can come in and just get some shots up, help them score the ball more, I think that's they'll be happy.
Yeah,
They'll be
yeah,
happy.
yeah. It's you said it, man. That obviously all the controversy pre-draft, not wanting to work out for teams, and he was a top 5 projected player anyways in this draft. So I don't think that really, obviously the Jazz didn't think that was something that
It's a big
scared him
deal.
away, I guess. But
Right.
just what he was able to do, probably probably the best shot creator in this draft. Tough shot maker. I think that's
For
something
sure.
at his size, like you
Tough
said.
shot maker.
He's 6'8". You know what I mean? So he's able to get to his spots at that
Yeah, not a
size.
guard.
Yeah, you don't
Not a guard.
you don't see that a lot. So I think what the Jazz needed, like you said, was another forward. Obviously, I think they had Laurie starting at like the 3 at some times throughout the whole season. They have like good centers. They had
That's fine.
what was his name, bro? John
Walker.
Collins.
Oh,
Collins.
JC.
Yeah, so it was
Yeah.
it was Laurie at the 3, Collins, and then Walker. So that's obviously a kind of a offensively not the greatest. So getting a player like Ace Bailey is kind of what they needed. So like you said, high risk, but I also think it's a high reward type of thing because if he can develop into a 15 point per game scorer, 20 whatever, whenever a couple years down the line, that's going to be a great pickup for them because I think with just they have that log jam at guards, so they also need someone else that can, get a bucket, and he is the
Okay.
definition of getting a bucket. Like you said, that not as efficient, but I think that's also just because that's you kind of live with it. That's the type of player he is. He's gonna take those tough contested shots. What in the NBA is gonna be a little bit harder, but I think with just the type of player he is, I think it's going to translate. Probably not the greatest, like efficient wise, but he's gonna get points. So excited to see what he can be. Like I said, obviously a top 5 pick this year, and
No
offensively,
doubt.
the sky is the limit for him. I think with just the way he
Yeah.
could score. So
Yeah, him and Dylan Harper accounted for I think like 40% of Rutgers points this year,
mm,
which is like absurd. Just two people. But
freshman
yeah, he
too.
had such a great yeah, freshman as well. He had such a great college. The Jazz said that his defense was what was like interesting about him, but we'll have to see how bought in he is on that side of the ball.
Right.
They said that some of his, he has a long wingspan, he can grab some boards, but like you said, high risk, high reward. And I think that's the Jazz are playing with house money. They're
Mm-hmm.
gonna be bad anyways, probably next season, right? So they know they're gonna have a draft pick here or there coming up. They've done a good job of keeping their draft picks,
Yep.
but they need to go big or go home, and I think this was the perfect pick. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, man, I'll let you take away number 6 if you
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
he's that guy.
Yeah. Number 6 pick. Washington's Wizards drafted Trey Johnson out of the University of Texas. ZD and I had
Austin.
the privilege to be able to watch him play in person, and right off the rip, man, just what he's able to do on the offensive side of the ball is ridiculous. ZD and I,
Oh,
as we were watching the game, we're kind of
so
talking, and
smooth.
yeah, it's just what he's able to do. He'll drop 20, but it's like a quiet 20. It's crazy to say that. I think he's the second leading scorer for freshmen, like for a whole season, behind KD, obviously, which is a crazy feat. I mean, shout out to him. And I think the thing with me, I think the thing that I like so much about him is just his ability to score. I think that's the main reason why Washington drafted him. Obviously, they just traded Jordan Poole, so they needed another guard that can kind of fill that hole for them. They're really good on the. I wouldn't say really good. Obviously, they're a really bad team, but they defensively potential that the team has.
Yeah,
Sar, Bilal,
yeah,
Bub Carrington, like they have these good young players that are a great pieces to build around. I think Trey Johnson just kind of fits perfectly in that situation. I'm pretty sure he's probably going to be starting right off the rip, and he's going to be. I think obviously, like you said, Cooper Flag, the Dylan Harpers, they're going to have probably more opportunities, especially Flag. I mean, he's going to be day one starter for sure. This one, I think Trey Johnson, he might start coming off the bench at the beginning of the season.
Flag is starting day
Day
one.
one, day
Wow.
one. But I think Trey Johnson, like I said, I would say he's probably the best scorer in this draft in my eyes. Just like I said, the fact that he's averaging, I think it was like 19.9. So I'm gonna round up and say 20 to make
His
it
efficiency, like you said,
super efficient.
it's not even the number; it's like efficiency,
Yeah,
like you're saying.
yeah.
He's
It's
almost 90%
yeah.
from the line as
Line.
well.
Yeah, I think he was
Yeah,
like a 51% from the
he was
field.
almost
Yeah.
yeah
So I think
50, damn near 50, 40, 90.
yeah. So just like I said, just elite scorer. filling a void that the Wizards are, kind of missing right now, kind of like a go-to guy. I don't, like I said, I don't know if he's going to be the go-to guy right off the rip, but I can see it later into the season, maybe halfway mark, him kind of get hitting his footing and kind of showing us what he was able to do in college. He might not be dunking on anybody or breaking anyone's ankles, but just efficient, man. Getting to his spots, getting to the free throw line. I feel like he's gonna do that. And I think the thing that we were talking about too is like he's like, I wouldn't say a stat sheet stuffer, but like he does what he has to do to win. And I think that's something that the Wizards are kind of missing, like getting boards or getting people involved. I think that's something that every team needs, but specifically the Wizards. Like this past season, Jordan Poole had a fantastic year, but he was on the Wizards, so it's kind of no one was really paying attention to that. But Trey Johnson, I think best offensive player drafted in this draft. Super excited to see what he can be, and I think he's probably gonna be, obviously jumping the horse or getting ahead of myself. He's probably my dark horse for rookie of the year, man. I think he could have a really good year, and he's in a position to where he can be that for them. So
yeah, I think he honestly, now that you say that, like no JP, Alex Sarr can get to it, but not like that. So we'll see. I think you stole the cake on this one, but yeah, getting to watch him, man, was super cool. Just seeing him score a silent 20, and
yeah,
I think he is one of the best scorers in the draft. Definitely top 2 or top 3, no doubt. But for me, it's just his efficiency. Like I brought up his stats a little bit, but I watched him a little bit because he obviously plays in Austin, but what he can do against high level competition, I think, says a lot as well. Trey Johnson has been a guy. I think what high school did he go to, bro?
Ooh, I think
Help
he went
me.
to
Was it,
high
was
school.
it,
I think he went to high school in Dallas. I'm pretty sure.
yeah, in Dallas, was it Garland?
He
I don't know.
Link Academy.
Lincoln? Yeah, Link Academy. Okay, so this dude has been a project. Obviously, he was getting to a bucket in high school, but I think his game became a lot more polished in the college atmosphere. And for me, I think that's what attracted the Wizards. Obviously, they got rid of Jordan Poole, but CJ brought this up. They have to kind of backfill that with something. And I think they're looking for Trey Johnson to come in and immediately be the guy from day one, bro. They don't have another dude who can get a bucket like him on the team, to be honest. Like, I don't think there's anybody on the Wizards that I can strongly name that like is better than him at like one-on-one or creating a shot like today.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that gives him a ton of leverage. Like you're saying, I'm sure he'll start from day one. And yeah, I'm just excited, bro. I think another great, I would say A pick, B plus A if you want to put it in that range. But yeah, the Wizards just need as many pieces as they can. And for me, another key thing, it's just like he's going to be on a rookie deal for the next 3 years. That's going to help them figure out what they can do the next couple of years, see if they can build around somebody, because they got rid of JP's contract. They don't have anybody who they're paying extensive money to right now, which is really good for them. So I like it. I think Trey Johnson is like, I would say he's a top 3 guard in this draft, bro.
Yeah.
Probably behind Harper.
VJ.
That's probably VJ, but I don't even know, bro. I was gonna say, like, yeah, I see why the Sixers took him at 3, but like they could have easily went with Trey Johnson, and that would have been a good pick. So like, I personally would still take Trey Johnson. I think he's a better scorer, but
he's
not
a
Dylan Harper.
A little more polished on the offense side.
Polished, yeah, bro. Yeah, like I've seen that in high school, but it was more so when we watched him, and obviously over the next few games, like just throughout the season against high level competition, he was still showing me like very simple step backs. He's very crafty. He gets to the line. He kind of reminds me of a mix between a smaller version of KD and Shea.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, that's kind of how I see it.
That.
Like he's somebody who like, he's not strong, but he'll post you and like fade, and then like he does like the Euros.
Yeah.
I'm like,
he's like a bigger guard too. He's 6'5", so
yeah, dude, I like it.
Yeah,
good for the Wizards.
Yeah,
they
good pickup.
They need something to be happy about, and I'm sure that did it. So that's awesome. So thank you for that one, CJ. Going into our next guy, my man, Fears, bro. Jeremiah Fears getting drafted 7th overall to the New Orleans Pelicans. Yeah, I see the smile on your face, man. But what I like about this cat from Oklahoma, so hey Cam, you see me with
Right.
the
That
2600. You
DNA,
see me?
huh?
I got you here. Just a killer, man.
Yeah.
Cold blooded. There's nowhere else to say it. Best handle in the draft. You guys have probably seen a lot of highlights if you guys have been staying up with the NBA, but definitely the best handle. For me, he just shows a ton of poise for being at his size. I think he's kind of underratedly athletic too. Can punch on you if you're not careful.
Yep.
But I think me and you are gonna agree on this, bro. Microwave,
Yep.
bro. Put you in, go score, go create for others, go be a spark plug, like you mentioned about VJ.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think Jeremiah Fears fits right into the mix, especially with what they did later in the draft. But
Hmm.
um, for me, DeJounte Murray's hurt. We figured that out. I kind of forgot about that, to be
Yeah.
honest with you guys. But I don't think DeJounte is going to be ready. And so CJ had asked a great question. Does Jeremiah Fears come in and start? And to be honest with you, with what he's shown throughout Oklahoma, the points what he was averaging, I think he was getting like 16 a game, bro. Like he was getting to his spots. So what he's shown me, I think he deserves a start, especially for where the Pelicans are at. I feel like Jeremiah Fears just brings in a ton of value to what they're doing there, bro, especially from the scoring department and being again, man, like at his size, it's tough to be efficient. For me, we'll have to see what he can do efficiency wise, and I would like to see him get others involved more,
Yeah.
but that'll come, man. That'll come. I
Yeah.
think this is another good pick for them. Um, yeah, there's really not much else to say. I think the Pelicans were in purgatory last season, so they were probably hoping for a little bit of a higher pick. But Trey Murphy's going to come back, Dejounte Murray's going to come back. Like they're going to have some guys that Jeremiah Fears can help kind of bolster their already positive environment. Like I think the Pelicans have an underrated culture. They've been in the playoffs throughout the last 5 years. Pretty candidly, it's just they last season they kind of got off track. They had a bright spot in Yves Nisi, but that was about it. I think Jeremiah Fears can be that next dude
Hmm.
for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you said, man. Uh, Obviously, microwave. I think that's pretty much the reason why they drafted him so high and
Yeah,
just what he can do offensively. And they got rid of their other guard as well, CJ McCollum. So they're kind of in the same position that the Wizards are in. Got rid of one of their best scoring guards. So let's draft someone that you know proved to us in the college basketball season that they can get a bucket. And what he was able to do for OU. They were, I think they started out pretty slow, and then he started to ramp it up a little bit, and
dude, yeah,
they started winning a lot more. So like you said it perfectly, bro. I think the thing with him is just probably getting other players more involved, being able to play make on the NBA stage and stuff. I think that's probably something that, obviously defensively, no one's a perfect player, but what he can do offensively for them, and if they can surround, they have Herb Jones there, they have Yves Missy, like you said, and whenever Zion's on the court, it's gonna be a good little tandem they have in New Orleans, man. I think
I'll have some.
this was a great pick for them. I think that they were needing another guard with DeJounte being injured. We found that out, before we started. We were kind of talking about who's going to be starting, or is Jeremiah Fears going to be coming off the bench? And we saw DeJounte. I think he had a shoulder surgery, so he's going to be out more than likely by the beginning of the season. So he's going to be able to get a lot of those minutes, get his footing, and even when he returns, I feel like he's a great player for them. Depending on what the rotations are and whatnot, coming off the bench. I think that he is like the perfect spark plug, essentially, to be able to
Yeah,
provide
bro, for
offense for
sure.
your second unit. And I think this was a great pick for them. He was a great player. And shout out to Cam. He always says it. OU always has a guy that goes pretty high in a draft every couple years, 5-6 years, whatever it is, and he was a part of that. So incredible player, polished
Yeah,
offensively. I think that's the thing with me. And obviously getting to the line pretty well for his size. I think he's going to be a good pickup for them. It's going to be interesting to see what their lineups are looking like throughout the whole season. Obviously, they dealt with a lot of injuries this past season, and hopefully he can be that type of player for them to just kind of figure out what his thing is. I feel like that's a thing for us probably going to say with a lot of these
good point.
players, figure out what kind of they specialize
The
in in,
thing,
in in the
yeah.
NBA. But if he can, if his game translates to the NBA, the Pelicans are going to be in a decent spot, bro, because he is, one of the better scorers in this draft. So excited to see what Fears can do, and just the fact that he's wearing zero and zero fears, bro. That alone, that's why I was like, yeah, he's a dog, bro. So
Uh,
excited to see what he can be for the Pelicans this upcoming season.
uh, he's a dog, bro. Like that's another thing too. Like I think that plays a part in this pick a little bit, but like they need people who want to play and like who aren't afraid. And yeah, like I think Jeremiah Fears has got all of that. So good for him, man. That was a cool pick to see 100%. But rolling into our next dude, man, Brooklyn Nets, baby. I mean, we're gonna talk about them in this a little bit later. But they cleaned up in the first round. Obviously, they had those 5 first round draft picks. I posted it on 3Man on Instagram. Go follow us there. But Igor Denham, bro, from BYU. For me, I watched a little bit of his highlights before we hopped on, man. And I didn't watch a ton about BYU's games. I'm not gonna lie. I wasn't really tapped in with that school, but I will say he's shown a ton of flashes of being like a more general kind of like that type player. Like for me, I just think he's super crafty. He gets his players involved. He feeds into their what they're trying to do in Brooklyn as well. I think Brooklyn since KD's departure, Kyrie, the James Harden, the Big Three era, they've been looking to kind of recoup some of that. Obviously, they were doing it with McCall Bridges and the Suns' old kind of roster for a second, but they moved on from McCall. They kept Cam Johnson. I think where they are right now is the best place that they've been in a long time. I'll tell you that. Igor Denham fits in perfectly. I think he's going to go in there, get guys in somebody who he can dribble the air out of the ball, but to me, I noticed he was very good. He made very good decisions in the pick and roll, something that Cam Thomas struggles to do at times. He's not as good of a creator. Igor Denham's definitely a better passer as well. I think for me, that's really what it was. Is I feel like the Nets needed to draft a guy who was a floor general and a passer, and this is exactly what Denham was doing for BYU. So shout out to him. But yeah, Brooklyn is like, I mean, bro, they cleaned up. I think this pick for me was kind of interesting. I saw where they wanted to go with it from like a bird's eye view perspective, you could say. But I think there were some better players on the board, and you'll see kind of whenever we get past his name a little bit. I think, in my opinion, there were some players that could have went in this spot for the Nets that they could have used, but ultimately, I think they were going with a playmaking guard, somebody who could pass, get guys involved, be more of a floor general, and yeah, I mean Cam Thomas, D'Lo, like they have all these guys who just dribble the air out of the ball, bro. They need the ball to get buckets, and I think Igor Denham's going to be able to be a good facilitator for him. And I don't know. I was going to ask you, you feel like he comes in and starts day one? Because I don't think so. Like,
I don't.
especially if they don't move D'Lo.
Yeah, I was about to say if they're not moving D'Lo, probably not. But like you said, I think that is kind of what they're missing. Someone that could play make, spread the ball around the court. Because like you said, they have the Cam Thomases, the D'Los, and even Cam Johnsons. A lot of those players they're great players, but Cam Thomas and D'Lo kind of, like you said, dribble the air out of the ball, so it's kind of hard to get everyone else involved. And I think that's kind of what they're looking for in Igor. So I don't know if he starts right off rip, but he's probably going to get a lot of playing time. I think he's going to be coming off the bench and getting a lot of run
Yeah,
for that second unit. But I don't know if he starts day one. But like you said, didn't really watch him play. Was able to see a couple highlights and watch his tape a little bit. But like you said it perfectly, bro. I think the thing with him was just being able to facilitate. And I think with him, he's a bigger guard, so
guard
I
exactly.
think that's kind of what they were looking for. Like you said, I don't know if him being drafted this high, it might have been a little bit of a reach. But then again, I wasn't watching his game, so don't want to say that right off the rip. But as I saw that pick, that's kind of what I was thinking. But they needed a guard that can, be a playmaker, be a facilitator on that team, and off of his college stats, it's kind of, or
Tape,
college
yeah.
game, yeah, it's kind of, the type of player that they're needing. So, don't really know much about him, not gonna lie, but if his game translates and he's able to do what he was able doing in college. I mean, it's a good fit for them because they don't have a guard that can do that for them. So I don't know
Yeah,
if he
they
starts day
don't.
one, but I think he's gonna get a lot of playing time for sure.
We'll have to see. I mean, the Nets are playing musical chairs with their starting lineup, bro. I don't even know. They be starting Dayron Sharp. I mean, no offense to Dayron Sharp, but like, man, like they need some dudes for sure. But he's definitely a bigger guard who fits into the mix, bro, immediately. So we'll have to see. Next pick though, I like this pick a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Toronto Raptors, ninth overall, selected Colin Murray Boyles out of was it South Carolina, I think.
Yeah, South Carolina. Yep.
Hey, but he was born in Toronto. Did you know that?
I did
I
know
put that
that.
on the outline.
Yeah.
Okay, for sure. Yeah, I mean, y'all can probably tell. For me, just the athleticism, right? Toronto, I think, is in an interesting spot, bro. Like we've seen them get rid of Pascal. The Emmanuel quickly situation is yet to play out, which is a bit of an issue. I think Scotty Barnes is obviously
Their
their
guy.
best player.
Yeah.
Like they're a dude. So they need to be able to find guys who can play defense, shoot the ball, be athletic. I think Colin Murray Boyles fits right into that. I watched him a little bit in college. To me, it was cool. Like, you know, I don't know if you saw this on social media, but like his girl was like super turned for him, bro.
Yeah.
And then like it was cool. I was like, damn, like he got a good support system. But he's been good all season, bro. His defense as well is solid. I think the Raptors are on a interesting place because I think they just got rid of or Zion Jiri just left.
Yeah. Right after the
Like
draft, literally.
yeah, like right after the draft, which I thought was interesting. But yeah, they're going to be going through some different organizational changes. So we'll have to see kind of what their draft picks can do, where they can fit in. I think Colin Murray Boyles has to answer that question that you brought up with a couple other players. But what's going to be his like thing?
Right.
Like what is he going to be able to do? Because he's not going to dominate the ball.
Mm-mm.
He's not going to be somebody like an IQ or Scotty Barnes who gets a ton of opportunities in the isolation. So we'll have to see what he can turn into. But I think he's a great piece for what they're doing right now. I think the Raptors are also in a good spot in terms of like next season for them. They're not trying to win the NBA championship. Of course, they would want to, but they got Grady Dick. Like they got some younger guys that are still developing. Like they're not in any rush. And I think adding Colin Murray Boyles to the equation can't hurt them. So to me, this was like another A pick, just because of what the Raptors need and kind of what was on the board. To me, this should have potentially been the Nets pick, but I have another dude who's coming up later that should have been the Nets pick.
Yeah, 100%, bro. I think the thing with him, like you said, is just what he can do on the defense side of the ball, his athletic
Yeah,
ability. Not the greatest shooter, but I mean,
not a good
you're
shooter.
not a good shooter. Not really a scorer as well. I think he's more so
Yeah,
one of those guys that's running down the lane, get quick outlet passes, dunking on people, and like getting boards, being a great defender. I feel like that's
this was a good pick though.
yeah. Especially with what they got going. I mean, like you said, IQ. They got RJ, Scotty, Grady
Oh, I forgot
Dick.
about RJ.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah. So they gotta whatever they got cooking in Toronto, bro. They're onto something. With a
for
player like
sure.
Scotty Barnes, like you said, he's the guy there. You didn't really need someone that dominates the ball and a scorer.
Exactly.
You kind of just need someone that can help provide kind of something they were lacking, and obviously they're all 6'8", 6'6", whatever it is. They're super lengthy. They have, I feel like that was a perfect piece for them to draft.
Percent.
Whatever they were missing, I think he's going to be a great like type of glue guy. Someone that can go out there. He might not get crazy stats for the whole season, but I feel like his impact on the court is going to be bigger than what his stats show. So excited to see what he's gonna be. Feel like you said, it was a great pick for them. Didn't really watch him play, but was watching some tape of him, and he's great, man. He's kind of like what Toronto has been drafting for the past
Yeah,
couple seasons.
athletic
Just
wing.
athletic wing, super lengthy, can be versatile. So excited to see him play, man. Think this was a great pick for them. And what they already have going anyways with their previous draft picks. It's this is kind of what they needed, in a sense. Obviously with the next pick that would have been perfect for them as well. But we'll get
Yeah,
to that soon.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think. the Raptors are also missing OG Anunoby just a little bit. I feel like they hope, Colin Murray Boyles can turn into a great offensive player or a decent offensive
Right.
player like OG has. And I would say OG is like a good offensive player now.
Right. Oh
I,
yeah,
I
hundred
know it was
percent.
rookie year, like it was tough for him. He wasn't able to get to his spots, but I think he learned a lot through Pascal and just what the Raptors organization gave him. And you guys see it on the Knicks. So I think the Raptors have some developmental W's in their
Oh, 100%.
organization. I think they're hoping Colin Murray Boyles can turn into a two-way star. So
Mm-hmm.
shout out to him, man, and his girl, obviously, for supporting. So, but yeah, bro, this next guy, like I was really shocked obviously at number 10 that the Suns were sitting on the board. The reason they had the number 10 pick in this year's draft is because of that trade with Houston. So didn't want to say that. We talked about the trade Jalen Green, but 10th overall, Phoenix Suns select Kuman Malawach out of the African Academy. So it was cool. I guess NBA has like a partnership with the African, like some in the European, and they do like little academies, and I guess they try to foster future NBA players. And Malawach is one of those players from South Sudan who they believe has a potential chance to be one of a great one, basically somebody who's a lockdown, interior defender, somebody who gets a ton of boards, and obviously somebody who can step out, hit the three if needed, dunk on you. But for me, I feel like the Nets could have taken this dude. I was kind of shocked that, for me, I think they need a center who's looking to be a bit more polished than Claxton. No offense to Nick, but I think he hasn't really been able to get it done on the offensive side. I think Malawak has a ton of just upside on that side of the ball. I think his defense is locked. Like we know he's going to be a good defender just
Yep.
because of his size and what he can do. Obviously, he's 7. I think he's the second biggest guy in this draft, if I'm not mistaken, behind Hanson Yang. So obviously, there's that size advantage there. The reason the Suns drafted him is they don't have a center whatsoever. So I know they were whenever they saw
Oh,
that, he
100%.
didn't go in the last two picks because I'm sure they were a bit worried. Both the Raptors and the Nets actually have a center need, which is kind of interesting. So I was a little shocked that they didn't take Kuman there, but I think the Suns went in, scooped it up. And yeah, he's just a project, bro. I think he played at Duke for that 1 year. He was with Cooper Flag and Concanupul as well, and I think he showed a lot of what he could do there on the defensive ball. But for me, it's just how is he going to turn into
Mm-hmm.
that offensive superstar that people say that he can be? And we'll have to see. I think he needs to get in the weight room a little bit. Now that KD is gone, I think he immediately is going to be starting. I think him and Mark Williams are going to be starting. I think it's going to be okay. So this is how I think it's going to be. They're going to run Jalen Green at point. Probably. Who do you think? Beal, Booker, like
Yeah.
all three?
That's and then they will make up for the size with Malawak and Mark Williams on the backside.
Yeah, that's who I was thinking. It would be like that's who you can go to. I mean, unless they want to put Grayson Allen, but he's not like he's start.
Yeah.
So
Maybe he
yeah,
gets the start, but then they kind of just rotate him in and out type of deal. Maybe.
yeah. I just don't see a world in which Malawach doesn't start, bro.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
he's coming in to be the firm center. I think Mark Williams can play power forward
Yeah. He's hands down the best interior defender in this draft. I would say.
in this draft.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure, hands down. It's just the question marks on the offensive side,
Right.
man. I hope he can like turn into that. Hopefully he gets with like somebody who can help him with his post game something because I think he definitely can score the ball, but I would love to see more, just better footwork.
Yeah.
Better polish around the rim. I think he needs to go to like Nikola Jokic school or something. Just like
Hey, he needs to hit up Hakeem, man.
Hakeem, yeah, there you go. I'm sure Hakeem. I'm sure he's talked to Hakeem.
Oh, 100%.
Like I don't even doubt that. But I would say A plus. This is the A pick.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna say A plus. That's not like the Mavericks, but I give it an A just because of its fit and then like best available. I think I'm not gonna lie. I think the Raptors and the Nets kind of fumbled, not with their picks, but like they could have taken somebody better who addresses a need. But it's fine they didn't do so. I think the Suns got pretty lucky with this because this was like their prized possession in that trade.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
So like if they couldn't have gotten somebody that they were happy with, I think that this year would have been a waste for them completely. But I think getting Malawach here is like they're like really excited. I
Mm-hmm.
saw his intro thing for the Suns and it was cool. Like they were like cheering, blah blah blah. Because he was like, bro, he was crying,
Crying.
bro.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I get it. Like like he again just doesn't come from a lot like places with no water or electricity
Yeah.
like actually. So for him to like make it, it's cool to see because it gives a lot of kids from Africa hope.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. You said it perfectly, bro. I think the thing with him, like I brought it up a second ago, best interior defender in this draft, and
Yeah,
just what he was able to do for the Duke, holding down the paint. Obviously on the offense side of the ball, more so a project, but if he can get that down, then he's gonna be a really good center in this league. And I think the thing with a lot of these big men that are coming into the league from college and whatnot, it's their games translate a lot easier than a guard. Obviously the size
yeah.
helps, and the defense.
Edie.
Yeah, Edie, to bring it up perfectly. His it's just his offense ability. That's all I'm worried
Yeah, that's
about.
it.
And I know he's gonna hold down the paint for the Suns, and that's exactly what they needed. Obviously, prior to getting Mark Williams in that trade, they didn't have a center, so perfect fit for
Their
him.
issue is defense. Exactly.
Yeah, yeah, it's the defense, bro. Like I said, it's hard to not get someone that could just hold down the paint. Not the greatest offensively, but when you have Bradley Beal, Devin Booker, Jalen Green, you don't really need much out of your center.
Don't
You
need
just
that.
need them to get boards, get a couple blocks a game maybe, and he could potentially be a great one of the best centers in the league. If he
Yeah.
figures out the offensive side of the ball, and
14,
yeah,
10, four
yeah,
blocks.
that's all you need, man. That's all you need.
Yeah, to be a great center. And I think that not to harp on them, but now that the positionless basketball is kind of like you just need to be able to hit an open three, get you like 12, 14 points and double digit rebounds
Yep.
with some blocks too. That would be nice.
Yeah.
I think Malawach can do that. So I love how you brought that up. I literally think like they know that they can polish his off game. It's like the defense that was so like you can't teach that. You're not going to get guys to buy in. I know Jalen Green, him, Devin Booker, Bradley Beal, but they are not good defenders. They're going to give up a ton of line drives. So I think Malawach has a chance to be on. He's going to have some blocks for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
he's going to average a couple.
Yeah.
That's a good bet, bro. If that number's under 1.5, smash the over.
Yeah.
Like seriously, for the season, like I think he's going to get at least 2 blocks a game.
Yeah. That's not a bad bet, man. I like that. That's
No,
not
for
yeah.
sure, 100%. But going into our next guy, bro. Honestly, the Grizzlies had an interesting draft as well. But they took Cedric Coward out of Eastern Washington, I think, which is an interesting little college. But yeah, bro, again, the Grizzlies have been on an interesting timeline, really since Ja got suspended for the gun incident. But to me, it seems like they just recently traded Desmond Bane. I know we talked about it too, but since then, it seems like they've had some turmoil and trying to figure out what they really wanted to do. Honestly, this dude was a mid-major who climbed Division III to first-round pick. We talked about this before we got on the pod, but I think that's the guy you were talking about.
Yeah.
Just how are you here?
Right.
I think that's what me and CJ always speak about is like there's really no excuse. Cedric Coward got here from a Division III school, so it kind of proves to you that you could be a lot of in the NBA. But neither here nor there. This dude is super competitive, a bigger wing, and yeah, man, I didn't watch a ton of his games. I'm not gonna lie to you, but I think Memphis, like the type of grittiness where they've been over the last 2 years, bro, he fits in immediately into what they're doing. I know he's a good defender. I know he's a dog too because of where he comes from and just getting to the NBA at that level just says a lot. So I know Memphis is really excited. They had to fill a need with the Desmond Bane trade, obviously, so they had to kind of get a guard/forward. Desmond Bane was definitely more, but I think Cedric Coward's a little bigger than him, right?
Yeah. Yeah, he's 6'5".
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think he's the same size. They're like the same size, but I know he can play the 3 too.
Has a
but yeah,
7'2" wingspan though.
Yeah, that's what it is for sure. That's why I think his defensive ability is what's going to be most important, especially Jalen Wills, GG Jackson. Like some of those guys are going to get more opportunities than Cedric Coward, but I know he's going to go out there and really be a great defender. And like I said, just the Memphis grittiness, bro. Like I think
Dude.
he fits right into what they're doing there. It's crazy. Memphis has at pick 11. I mean, they were a team that, to be honest with you, ran into the NBA champs, right? So like they lost quickly last playoffs. So I'm sure they're trying to figure out a way that they can make moves to improve. But I think the Grizzlies are a good team, and I think this was a solid pick. I had to give this one a B plus for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. No,
I like it, man.
I talked highly of what the Grizzlies are able to do on their development side, and I think this is a perfect player for them. Obviously with the Desmond Bain trade, and they have Jaw, they have Edie, Gigi Jackson, Jalen Wells. They have a pretty good roster, so they didn't really need someone that can shoot the lights out or be ball dominant. They needed kind of just a plug and play player that obviously defensively is probably going to be his main thing going into the league. But from what I've seen these past couple seasons, they're able to develop those type of players, kind of mid-major, not really. I think he went to Eastern Washington, like you said, but I think he transferred to Washington State, but he only played 6 games. So that's the thing. People were kind of, he was playing against, weaker competition, but like you said, the fact that he was able to go up the ranks and be a lottery pick, and, like I said, going to the Grizzlies, they traded for this pick. So it's perfect in my eyes. You know what I mean? Obviously
Yeah, it's
not
great
like
pick.
a plus or nothing, but for what they need and
Yeah, for sure,
what I've
fine.
seen from their development staff, this is their type of player, that gritty, that playing defense. And if he can develop his offensive game into, it doesn't even need to be 15, 20 points. If he's getting 10, 12 points a game coming off their bench, more than
Oh,
likely,
bro,
that's all you
like
can really
eight
ask for.
points.
Yeah. Yeah, so just
You know,
definitely
4 layups.
one of those I would say projects. We didn't really
Yes,
get to
yeah, he's a project for sure.
didn't really get to see him play on the collegiate level as much. Like I said, I think he only played like 6 games. I think he was injured, but upside
Yeah,
is
question mark for me too is just high level competition.
right,
Um, he hasn't played against guys like a Cooper Flag or
right.
so
But
we'll have to see.
yeah, we'll see.
We'll
But
see.
like I said, I'm not too worried, man. I'm not gonna lie. I think, like I said, I keep bringing
No,
up
he's
the
good. So
Memphis
cold.
Grizzlies, their development staff, bro. I think that is incredible. Probably
Top
up there.
five in the
Yeah, I
league.
would say up there with the Thunder. You know what I mean? I think
Yeah.
it's
Oh
kind of
yeah.
just they're able to kind of find these hidden gems and just kind of picking a player that they need for the future or what can they can provide for them right off the bat. I think he's that type of player. He's a little bit older. He, like you said, worked his way up to get to this point. So I have no doubt that he's gonna keep doing the same. And when you're with the Grizzlies, from what I've seen these past couple seasons, he could potentially be one of like great making second all rookie team type of player. They did it
Yeah,
this
for
past
sure.
season with
No doubt.
Edie and Wells. So I have no reason to think that they're not gonna potentially do that again.
Yeah, no, 100%. I like that. I think, yeah, bro. I don't know, but rolling right into the next pick. Hey, the Bulls made a trade today. Did you see it?
I
I'm
did.
asking. Oh yeah, can you tell the people what happened?
Yeah, man. Lonzo Ball is going to the Cleveland Cavaliers in return for Isaac Okoro.
Yes, sir. So they got rid of Lonzo Ball today. But that's not why we were talking about it. But I'll get into that in a second. But the Chicago Bulls selected Noah Essengay out of Ulm, Germany.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, when I was doing some research into this dude, because I did some research into him, like when he had got drafted, and this is a good pick. This is a pick in my opinion. Very versatile forward to me, one of the more versatile players we have in this draft in terms of being a two-way star. I think he has the chance to be a great scorer in this league, but obviously the defensive abilities, the Bulls need that, man. I think they're in purgatory. Josh Giddey's a goat for sure. They got some killers. Kobe White is good. Like
Mm-hmm.
he's a good player in the NBA, but they need somebody else who can really score the ball and also defend. And I think Essengay gives them this chance. And I know he's going to be potentially starting from the jump. The Bulls are not a very good team, but I know that he's excited to go there. And for me, it's just like finding out how they can get Kobe White and Giddey some right. You saw it last year. But what made that run so special at the end of the year was like they're doing this by themselves as like a tandem, kind of no bigs. Like I think Vucevic had some. Honestly, last season I think was a down year for him. I think the year before was a really good year.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think Vucevic has ups and downs throughout the year. I think they just need some consistency at the forward position, and Essengay has some great length as well. He's very versatile, like I said before, and I think they're just betting on the international waters phenomenon, man. Like you got to take a chance on guys who've played overseas who haven't necessarily played in the same type of competition rank as some other high level college players or whatever. But I think when you look at the stats, bro, and you actually go through the film, you look at the tape, you're like, okay, these guys are moving with a certain type of pace. And, I did some research into him. Like, he's been playing basketball since he was young. And I think there in Germany and Europe and what they do really well, and like some other countries, that they get them in academies at a young age. They just develop. So he's been playing basketball for a long time. And I'll talk about another guy who was doing that too. But I think you're going to start seeing some of these academy dudes from overseas definitely start to pop up. And I think Essengay is one of those guys, man. He already comes into the NBA polished as a defender, but if he can get the opportunities to be good on offense, I think he's going to be a threat. Athletic, versatile, needs to get a better shot, but I think that'll come. But I'm excited for him, bro. I was excited to talk about him because he's going to be good. I think this is an A pick for the Bulls.
Really? Yeah, I was about to say I'm not.
Yeah,
I wasn't aware of the type of player he was, so I didn't really do my research on him. But from what you're telling me, and he's a 6'10"
solid.
forward.
And yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, he's big.
versatile. Just like I said, I don't know much about him, so I'm gonna rely more so on what your research and your studying of his tape. But it's exactly what they're missing. If
Yeah, they
what you were
don't.
saying, they needed another forward. They have Matas, obviously, but they
Oh,
needed,
I forgot about Matas. Ah,
but they they're kind of
yeah,
figuring
he's good.
out what other players they need. And like I said, wasn't aware of who he was. I'm not gonna lie to you, didn't really do too much research on him, but from what Z says, that's
Noah's good for
if
sure.
Z says it's a good pick, then I say it's a good pick. So
Yeah, for sure. I know you rocking with that one, but when the Bulls made that pick, I was like, that's a good pick
yeah.
for sure. Like I think, like you're saying, bro, they need another forward, and I think Matas can score, but again, like he even has some growth to do in that regard. Like I just think that they need to see the next 3 years as a project. I think Essengay fits along the timeline of the Buzelis and the Giddy, and I know you might have seen that Giddy might be getting an extension too. So
I
I
did
think the
see that.
Bulls are trying to really build around that. So I think Noah's a good pick, bro. Like I said, that's like an A pick for me. That's who I would have taken if I were the Bulls. If that,
Yeah. Hell yeah.
there you go. Hey, this dude, I'll give you the floor on this one, man,
Man.
because we almost got to the top 15.
Yeah. So next pick, 13 pick in the NBA draft, the Atlanta Hawks drafted Derek Queen, but they traded him to the New Orleans Pelicans. ZD and I talked about Jeremiah Fierce and kind of where their direction is with him. They get, probably one of the most polished scoring big men, I would say, in this draft. Derek Queen
Yeah,
went to Montvert with Cooper Flag. Just kind of, I think he's one of those players, right, where if he was like a European player, he might have been drafted a little higher. I think just his frame and his size, a little undersized for a center, but I think just his feel for the game is what I was really impressed with. Just kind of seeing the type of player, obviously that the shot that he made in the NCAA tournament,
other beer.
yeah, that was a crazy shot. And obviously the Pels are looking for someone that they could put next to Zion. They got Ease Missy, like we said earlier, but kind of somewhere they can, create a little bit of offense from their big man.
Yeah, bro.
That's something they've been lacking for the past couple years, and I think he's going to be a great pickup. I talked about him. I think we were texting. I wanted to bring him up for sure because he's the fact that he fell this low in the draft. I think it just kind of shows what the other teams were needing. but I like
Yeah,
him. I like his game. I think he's, like I said, I think he's an underrated athlete as well. You know, he's not dunking on people and he's not the fastest, but he kind of gets to his spots, and he's just, like I said, probably the most polished big man offensively in this draft. So
that's for
think that's
sure.
a perfect pick for the Pels. Obviously, they traded their first round pick for next year, so they're kind of at least hoping I'd assume, for him or for Fears and Queen and everyone else on that roster to potentially make the playoffs. That's what I'm assuming with them trading that pick. But I think the only reason why I don't like that trade is because I don't think they're going to be that good next year. But I
Yeah,
think with the talent that they acquired, getting Fears, getting Queen in this draft, it was a perfect fit for me. You know, they needed a
congrats to
center
them.
that could,
Yeah,
score. The Pels have a lot of forwards, guards that can kind of get to it. They're kind of missing a big man that can, create some offense. And excited to see what he can be, man. I think this is another one of those, with the injuries and whatnot. I feel like he's probably gonna get a lot of run, and he could probably potentially be another one of my dark horse rookie of the years type of players.
you know what would be so funny, CJ? If the Pelicans get the number one pick, they got to give up AJ DeBanston.
Man, man, that would be that sounds like a nightmare for the
I could
Pelicans
see
fans.
that happening, or some like
Yeah,
I'm not even gonna lie. Like you're saying, they suck so bad. Like it's AJ, but it's not theirs.
yeah.
It's the Hawks.
Hawks. That would
Oh
be
my
crazy,
god!
bro.
But we,
That would
we don't
be
even need to
insane.
talk about that. But yeah, I think Derek Queen's awesome, bro. Like you said it perfectly. Out of Maryland, Montverde Academy, somebody who's like again been in the rankings for forever. But I think what he proved to me is really just his defensive ability. I think I always knew he was did, but he seems like a guy who can man the interior. And I think when the Pelicans were searching for not a Jonas Valanciunas, but somebody who gives them that type of power. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
let's be honest. Like Joe Val's not the best scorer. I would even argue Derek Queen's a better scorer. But what he did do is he set great screens, he rebounded, played decent defense, and I think that's what you need from Derek Queen. He's gonna get a lot of run in this situation too. You know, especially if guys aren't healthy. You spoke about it. You know, Zion's hurt. Not hurt. He'll start, but Dejounte Murray. You know, CJ McCollum's gone. Trey Murphy's hurt. So there's going to be some opportunities for some, scraps to be fed on. But I think Derek Queen is no slouch, bro. I'll be honest. I think for me, he's like the best big man in this draft, just pure big man,
Mm-hmm.
defense and scoring. I think Malawach is more of like a project who has like a little bit more upside because he hasn't tapped into his potential yet. But I think Derek Queen is like, he knows what type of player he's going to be. And that's honestly, we didn't talk about that, but that's the flip side of what you're saying whenever a player comes in and is like, who am I going to be?
Right.
Sometimes it's good to know and be like, this is who I am.
Yeah.
This is who I'm going to be. I think Cooper Flag knows, right? I think Derek Queen kind of knows. I don't think that's a coincidence, though. I think they grew up like playing in the right environments to be able to mold their basketball mind frame. Same with Trey Johnson. Like, he kind of knows exactly who he's going to be as soon as he gets through the door. Like, I don't think he's going to change the type of basketball player that he is to try to fit a team. And I feel like Derek Queen's going to do that really well. So, shout out to him and the Pelicans. You know, you said it perfectly, but they gave up their first round pick to Atlanta for this pick in this year's draft, sorry, the 13th pick for Atlanta's 13th pick this year. And hopefully it pays dividends. Like obviously they have 1 year to turn it around and get it figured out, but the Pelicans just need to get healthy. I don't think, you said it earlier. The West is a bloodbath, but Derek Queen was almost averaging a double double in college, so
Mm-hmm.
solid, bro,
Yeah. Great pick.
solid. Yeah, he's really good, man. I was excited, but hey, man, going into this next pick, San Antonio Spurs are back on the clock. At the 14th spot, they selected Carter Bryant out of Arizona, another athletic wing. We talked about him a little bit before, not too much, but he's really interesting. I like this, but it's just another championship piece that you want to add around Wimby. I kind of see him as like a Jeremy Sohan type of development project. Obviously they're very committed to the wing development on their team, and I think Carter Bryant fits right alongside what they're trying to do. For me, I think he's going to be more of a defensive specialist who needs to knock down some threes. That's kind of what I'm hoping he turns into for the San Antonio Spurs, and I'm sure they're looking for him to be a good 3 and D guy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if he'll play a ton of minutes next year because it is, I think he's bigger, but he's still at the forward spot. It's not like he's going to play power forward or center or anything like that. It's going to be small forward, power forward sometimes. And I think, again, the Spurs have a log jam in that position. But if he can find a way to get on the court, impact winning, I think it's going to be through his defense and through knocking down threes. And he's athletic too, man. Like, don't get it twisted. He'll be able to dunk on you. Carter Bryant is definitely one of the best athletes in this draft. I wasn't shocked at this pick. I liked it a lot. I think San Antonio is in an interesting spot. We spoke about it almost 45 minutes ago, but whenever you have Victor Wembanyama on your team, it becomes a lot easier to draft for fit. I think they took Carter Bryant the other day for fit. I think he's literally a really good person to have in your back pocket if somebody goes to the bench, HB struck, like whatever. You
Mm-hmm.
can just put this guy out there who's kind of a defensive spark plug, honestly. He brings a ton of energy on the defensive end. He hit a three if needed, and then, like, rather dunk on you, bro. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
But Arizona's had some good players come out of there, bro. Recently, Benedict Matthews, Caleb Love signed that deal. So, like, they've had a couple guys come out of Arizona.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Definitely, bro. Like, San
Yeah.
Antonio's on one, Los. I'm
Right.
doing that one for you, bro. Like, they're getting good picks for sure. This
Yeah.
is a B plus for me.
Yeah. Yeah. No, like you said it perfectly, bro. The I wouldn't say he's a project because I feel like he kind of knows what he is, and he kind of
Yeah.
locked in. He his game kind of changed when he got to college. I feel like in high school he went for more. He was trying to score, get to it, create for himself. I feel like in college he kind of settled in, focused on the defensive side of the ball, and obviously whenever he needed to, he could score. So if he can translate that to the Spurs, and like you said, there's a log jam in that position. But if someone gets injured or if anybody, whatever happens, he'll be able to come off the bench and kind of be like a like you said, defensive spark plug. And if he's able to, get a consistent 3-point shot down, and he, like you said, he's one of the more athletic people or players in this draft. It's a perfect
Sure.
pick for them, bro. It's like you said, the Spurs do it again, man. The fact that they're able to get two picks in the lottery, just kind of goes to show what they got going on and just what they're trying to build around Wemby, and that was another great pickup for them. So excited to see what he is. He's one of those players where, felt like he got drafted at a perfect situation. For his talent and his upside. To the type of player he is, it's going to be great to see his development with the Spurs.
Yeah, I like that pick a lot. Like I said, B plus easily. I think he's also like a good culture fit. Seems like a good dude, funny guy. So shout out Carter Bryant, 100%. But this next pick, it's the reigning NBA champions, the Oklahoma City Thunder, picking 15th overall. CJ, you could take it away, man.
Yeah, man. So Thunder drafted Thomas Sorber. He's a center out of Georgetown. Probably one of the, I wouldn't say the best defender, but probably one of the more versatile defenders that we had in this draft. And I think it was a great pickup, man. Obviously, thinking of the future, right? We have Hartenstein. He's more than likely going to contract conversations are coming up. We're gonna have to extend Chet. We're gonna have to extend J Dub. Think this was a perfect pick for us, kind of filling in that big man role. Obviously, Jay Will is a great player, had a lot to do. The reason why we were able to beat the Nuggets in that series, but kind of needed someone that we can rely on the defensive side of the ball whenever we don't have Hartenstein, don't have Chet on the court, and he kind of fills that hole, that void for us. So I think this was a great pickup. I think he's one of the more polished big man. I wouldn't say the most polished, but kind of a two-way center. And like I said, just kind of exactly what we're needing, especially thinking of the future. I feel like that's what more so this pick was for. We have Topic coming off of this
Oh my
injury
god.
that he's going to be a rookie this season, so we have him as well, and we have Sorber. So I think it was a great pick, man. Thinking of the future, thinking of another big man to potentially be backing
I
up
love Topic.
Chet and stuff. So I love this pick,
Oh
bro. I think
no.
this was a really good pick. The fact that we were able to snag a center. In this league that we have now, I think we kind of showed it with our double big lineup. It looks like it's kind of coming back in a sense. The big man role and just being versatile. He can score and he also can defend. So I think he has a 7'6" wingspan. So it's not going to be easy to score on him on the paint. So excited to see what he can turn into. I think he might have had an injury.
Good.
I don't know exactly if he's going to be able to play for us this upcoming season. But I think, like I said, thinking of the future, thinking of a big man that can be backing up Chet if Hartenstein ends up leaving, just a huge upside for us. I think this is something that a lot of teams are looking for. A defensive big man that can potentially be a decent scorer in the league too, like we were talking about with Malawat. He fell to us, bro. So I think this was a great pickup, man.
100%. I think yeah, Sorber's like I wouldn't even I don't know. I don't know. Cause what, you think he's gonna play in the summer league?
I don't know, man, because I know that was something that he kept talking about. Let me look it up. But I know he had like a foot injury, so I don't know exactly the
If
timeline.
Topic is gonna go in the summer league,
More than likely, he took
all I
this.
know is those cats, like they're gonna get a lot of run in the summer league. For them, that's gonna be like their NBA championship because it's just tough to play on the current Thunder roster right now. But I think this is another great pick for their future, like CJ said. So I
Yeah,
love it, man. I gave it an A. Like he's averaging 15 and 9, I
yeah.
think, and he shoots the three.
Two blocks,
Um,
1.5 steals.
yeah, dude, yeah. Shout out Sorber for sure. But now, guys, we have finally hit that midway mark.
I,
This is exciting. We're gonna speed it up.
yeah, I was
What's
about to
up?
say, are we going through the whole first round? We're kind of
Nah,
we're like
we're
an
gonna go
hour
through.
30 in right now, so I didn't
Yeah,
know.
we're gonna go through Yang. I think Traore, but the rest we're just gonna read, and
Okay,
then we can hit the Nets.
cool, cool, cool.
But I don't know if you wanted to talk about Yang because he is the 16th pick, and
Yeah,
then Walter Clayton Jr. too, bro.
yeah, that was a solid pickup for the Jazz.
Yeah. But yeah, no, Yang Hansen was the next one. 16th pick. He's supposed to go. I think somebody made this pick. Let me see it. I think he went to the Blazers, but I think the Grizzlies picked him.
Mm-hmm.
Supposedly he's the Jokic of China, but this was the most shocking pick of the first round. Uh, I don't really have much to say. I didn't watch him at all, so
Yeah,
I
neither
don't
did I.
like. I don't know. But if he really is the Jokic of China, cool. But I was surprised because the Blazers have 4 centers on their roster, and like they don't need another center. So he really has to be special to get picked here. I didn't see that. I didn't see that happening. Walter Clayton Jr. got drafted by the Wizards, 18th overall. Um, but he got traded. He got traded to the Jazz. I think there were some issues with him and Ace Bailey trying to arrive in the facility. But I think Walter Clayton Jr. fits right into what they're doing. Again, bro, made a lot of noise in the tournament. Is a dangerous shooter. Something that they need. Yeah, bro, he's gonna be somebody that they can rely on a triple, but also be able to create his own shot.
Mm-hmm.
I think Ace Bailey and Walter Clayton Jr. are kind of similar in the way that they play in a sense of like hunting for shots in that case, but they're just two different sizes of player. One of them's a guard and then one of them's a forward.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Nets got Nolan Traore at the pick. Hey, he's from France. He's from the same academies Wemby's from. Traore is cold. To me, this was the best pick for the Nets they made in the first round just because, again, like I think they're gonna have Igor and Traore go back like head for head to see who can potentially run the team in the future. For me, it's just his defense, man. I think coming out of the academy, obviously he's been developing at from a very young age, but he didn't play the college basketball, go the normal route, and I think that says a lot because those dudes are professionals. So Igor Denham technically got the NIL money, but I feel like Traore's faced some tougher competition, and I think that's going to benefit him whenever they're battling for the spot. But just a super crafty guard. Again, I would say he has the second best handle in the draft as well, behind Fears. Somebody who can run the pick and roll, somebody who looks to get people involved. So I thought that was their best pick. I didn't want to go over to that, but 16 through 20, I'll name them off right now. It was Yang Hansen, who I spoke about going to the Portland Trailblazers. I had Joan Beringer from Slovenia. This dude's an interesting guy, bigger Slovenian center, like kind of weird, honestly. But the Timberwolves, I think they need some 3-point shooting. You saw the Nas Reed contract, 5 years, 125. So they're trying to build around that nucleus of Anthony Edwards and Nas Reed and what they got going on there. But that was the 17th pick. 18th pick was Walter Clayton Jr. from Florida. Obviously, the Wizards took him, but traded him to the Jazz. 19th was Nolan Traore going to the 20th was Kasparis Ukonis, who's honestly cold, man. If you guys don't know, cool point guard from Illinois. Just another crafty guy. I would say he has a nice handle, but can shoot the three for sure. I think the Heat, for me, are in an interesting spot. They re-signed Davion Mitchell. You could say they do have kind of a guard log jam right now, but I think he's going to be somebody who's like a Jovic. They can sit on him, play him when they need to, and I think he's going to come off and do well. So the Heat got Kasparis, who's pretty good. The Jazz selected Will Riley, who's also from Illinois, so the back-to-back there. The Hawks took Drake Powell, who's pretty good for sure. Another shooter out of UNC. The Pelicans took, I think, Asa Newell, who they got traded to the Hawks, correct?
Yeah.
Because of the Derek Queen trade.
Yep.
So Asa Newell is cold. Also went to Montverde Academy, which is, of course, weird because they ended up getting traded for each other, but that's besides the point. From Georgia, super athletic, super long wingspan. The Hawks definitely need that. Jalen Johnson, KP, Asa Newell. There you go. You want to say who the Thunder took?
Yeah, so the Thunder actually drafted Nick Clifford, but we traded it to the Kings. So
exactly, Nick Clifford. So he goes to the Kings. It's cool to see because obviously he gets the Thunder. He goes straight to the other team.
Yeah.
But I think Sacramento needs a shooter, man, sharp shooter. Like, not a ton of great shooters in his draft, but Nick Clifford's one of them. Colorado State's also kind of been making some moves on the basketball map recently. I know when I was younger, they weren't super good, but they've gotten some better prospects over the last few years. This next pick, Jace Richardson, what did you think about that? Jason Richardson.
I like that pick, bro. I like that pick a lot. For one,
the Magic.
Just for the Magic. Obviously, his dad played there, but just kind of the type of player he is. He's an undersized guard, but his offensive capability is great. And with the type of team that they're building right now, that's kind of what they need. They have really good playmakers, defenders. They don't really have someone that I would say is like a microwave, though, off the bench. And I feel like that's a void that he could fill for the Magic. So I like that pick a lot, especially at 25, the fact that he was able to drop down to them. Solid. I like that.
Yeah, that was good. I like that 100%. Honestly, I don't know why Jace dropped that far.
Yeah.
It's fine. Here and there, the Magic recently got Desmond Bane. They're not in contention for looking for a new franchise player. So I think Jace Richardson comes in, immediately fills a void. Cole Anthony wasn't there anymore. I think he's going to take over those backup duties, and yeah, good for him. Ben Seraph was a 26th pick going to the Brooklyn Nets. I didn't watch him at home. I saw another German guard, similar to Noah Senga in that way, just coming out of Germany. I think he played at a professional level since he was a kid. So another guy who they feel like can provide value. I think the Nets had the last couple picks of this draft, so they felt like they had to make a decent splash. But for me, it's Nolan Traore is probably the best pick that they got in the first round. But 26 was Ben Seraph. 27 was Danny Wolf, who's the center from Michigan, who I like a lot, man. That's the A to me at the back end of the draft, but somebody who can shoot the three, tall, lanky center, and just gives the Nets another option, man. Like I said, he's a better scoring center than Nick Claxton is right now, and I think that gives them a lot of hope, especially moving forward. Like CJ brought this up, but the two bigs lineup might be coming back. Guys are starting to play bigger lineups, so I think Danny Wolf fits right into the mix. He's one of the bigger bigger centers that we have in this draft.
Mm.
The 28th pick, though, the Celtics took Hugo Gonzalez, which is another good pick, another crafty guard from Real Madrid. Um, Great floor skills and just a floor general. I think he's going to develop really well the Celtics for sure. So this is a great pick by them because I honestly couldn't believe he was forward at this time. But yeah, go look up Hugo Gonzalez highlights and then come back to me.
Okay.
Um, yeah, like they'll do it after this pod. But this next guy, Liam McNeely, traded to Charlotte, obviously from the Phoenix Suns. But this dude's
Mm-hmm.
again, the last Montverde guy to go, but UConn, just a killer, man. Like the 3 point percentage is really what stands out. I think Charlotte was obviously they were going shooting. They need it. LaMelo Ball, Brandon Miller, bro. They need pieces around those guys that can shoot the ball well. And I think Liam McNeely, obviously Concanupple, the number 4 overall pick, definitely are going to be able to do that. And then to round out the first round, man, we got Yannick Cohen, Niederhauser, bro, one of the bigger guys in this year's draft as well. He's the third biggest dude behind Malawach and Hansen, but another super tall, big center who I told CJ he's going to be able to back up Zubac tomorrow. That's really exciting, man. I know like the Clippers are they're probably really happy with what Ivica Zubac gave them last season, but I know they're definitely looking to have a feasible backup. You know, they didn't have a backup for Zubac last year who was viable, and I think that's why they went with Yannick Conan. So that rounds out the first round. Obviously, CJ is going to get the webcam back on in a second, but yeah, man, I just had it was a great time watching the draft, bro. Like I said, I think when I first was getting into it, I was like, should I watch the normal presentation? No, I'm gonna switch up to the alternate one, and that's what I ended up watching it on. So shout out to Kenny and Brian Windhorst for sure, bro. That was super dope. But I'm gonna roll right into the Brooklyn Nets offseason files because I know CJ and I have been meaning to do that from, and we haven't been able to do so because we haven't been recording 3 Man Week. Now that's cool, but we got to be able to get y'all the content. I got to roll into the Brooklyn Nets offseason files with CJ. We just got done rolling through the first round, but the Nets had 5 first round picks, man. Like, I would say, looking back a few years ago from where they were from Kyrie, James Harden, and Kevin Durant, now they're in a really good spot with a future. They have guys, they have assets, they have cap, they have draft picks. So I'm excited to get into this, man. I'll just dive right in, honestly. So the Brooklyn Nets, I did this for the Celtics and we did it for the Hawks as well. But we like to start off with some like 3 focal players or franchise players that we like to say on every single team that are not necessarily untouchable, but the best players that are available on the squad. So I'll get right into it. The Nets, like I said, they have a ton of cap room right now. I think it's like $50 million in cap. But I'll get right into their breakout players. Starting off with none other than Cam Thomas. CJ and I think, hey, Cam Thomas is one of the best scorers for sure, hands down. He had some crazy, I think he had like 3 straight games of 40 points like a couple seasons ago. I think it's an NBA record, if I'm not mistaken, for like, I think, did he do it in his rookie season?
He might have, bro. Let me look it up for you. But yeah.
Yeah, you can look it up for me real quick. But I think, whatever. Cam Thomas is a certified bucket. Breakout scorer who averages 25 a game. To me, he's a pure offensive talent and honestly just a fan favorite, bro. I think Brooklyn has kind of grown to love Cam and the type of scoring that he can offer, and he's earned himself the right to be able to shoot those shots.
Rookie
It happened,
season.
right?
Rookie season.
Yeah, that's why it was so.
He had 4 40-point games, and then he did 3 consecutive as a rookie.
Yeah, so like he's been killing from the jump, but I think for us, it's just he's been able to like polish it. I think 2 years ago it was very like quick, like okay, Cam Thomas is on one, like he's hot for sure. But now he does it every game. I think for me, that's why I had to put him at number 1. Is he's in those conversations right now with the GM? I'm looking at him as a franchise cornerstone. He's 23 years old. He's one of the younger players that they have right now in that mold, and he's low key a veteran. He's been in the league a little while now, so he knows what to expect. And I think Cam Thomas moving forward, like I had a question for you. It's in my notes, but you think he's untouchable?
I don't. I mean, he's a great player. I just don't know
I just don't.
what direction exactly the Nets are trying to go in right now. I mean, I would say he's a great player to have on your team. I wouldn't say he's untouchable though.
Yeah, I would agree. I think the Nets need to find a franchise superstar. I don't think Cam
Right.
Thomas is that, but I think he is the best player that they have currently on their team. No, I think the Nets. I think these next couple dudes are great, but I think they're just gonna lean into what Cam Thomas is gonna do during the season. So, uh, yeah, like I said, $50 million in cap. Cam Thomas probably the number one player. Their second best player is D'Angelo Russell. They made this trade, or they picked him up off the Lakers. But for again, do I want Dorian Finney-Smith on the Lakers? Hell yeah. Did I want D'Angelo Russell on the Lakers? Hell no. Do I think he's better on the Brooklyn Nets? Hell yeah.
Yeah.
As you guys can see, he plays with more joy. You saw it kind of as soon as he got traded, but just his scoring went up. I think he finished averaging like 18 and 9 on pretty decent splits. For me, it's just his age, right? We talked about it kind of before we got into the draft stuff, but he's almost approaching 30, which isn't super old, but D'Lo's been in the league for a long time, and I think the Nets are moving in a different direction when it comes to playing with their youth. Obviously, they're going to have 5 first-round draft picks that they can play at any given moment. And I think D'Lo is one of the big question marks for me this offseason. Again, his contract isn't the most favorable either for what he can do. So I think the Nets have to look to either A, move him, or B, maybe you bring him off the bench. But like you need to give like the younger players that you're drafting a trial rate, like especially if you're not going to be a good team. So I'll start off by saying that. But if D'Lo is starting, that is a disservice to all of the Nets players and the Nets guards who can be eating those minutes,
Yeah.
because D'Angelo Russell is a good player, but he's not a championship type guy, and I think they need to lean into their younger players. But he had some pretty good splits to end the year, so I don't want to not have him on this list. He's clearly one of the Nets' more important players, but ultimately, I think they should lean into, if they're going to take one of those two guys out of the starting lineup and Cam Thomas and D'Lo, I think it's D'Lo.
Right. Yeah, it's got to be.
Yeah, it's got to be. But
Especially with the
this
players that
next
they
guy,
drafted.
yeah, like Traore, bro. Like I'm telling you, bro. I know, or Igor Denham. Like, come on now. Like, if he ends up being a good facilitator, a little bit better on defense as well, because D'Lo and Cam Thomas are honestly, that's one of the worst defensive backcourts in the NBA. I'm gonna be honest.
It might
It
be
might
the
be. It's
worst.
probably negative.
Yeah.
Yeah, it might be the worst.
Yeah.
I think it might be the worst. Like, not even trying to hate. So they need they need everybody bought in on the backside, and they just need people who can guard right now. But yeah, Cam Thomas, D'Lo, probably the two biggest players that the Nets have, and then this last guy, Cam Thomas, man, we talked about him. I think for me,
Cam
the
Johnson.
Suns experience. Yeah, sorry, Cam Johnson. Sorry, there's
You're good.
two.
You're good.
Yeah, I think for me, the Suns, like, this experiment with taking the Suns' old assets and trying to make them whole hasn't really worked out. I don't think the McCall Bridges and the Cam Johnson experience has been like amazingly great, but I do know that he is a 3-and-D asset. I know he's a great shooter. He's been shooting 40% from deep over the last couple years. And I just know that he can guard, and that's something that D'Lo and Cam Thomas really can't do that.
Mhm.
For me, like that's what makes him more special. Is like his scoring is great. I think he averages like the second most on the team or the third most. But for me, it's just a defense, man. Shot 40% from deep last season as well. So I think looking at these three dudes, to me, if you had to ask the Nets GM, like who's the most important, it's these three guys, hands down.
Do
Just from what they can do from an offensive standpoint, and then honestly, they're the best that they got right now. Like it's not like the Nets have Kevin Durant or Kyrie or James Harden anymore.
Yeah.
This is kind of it, and they're in a wide open Eastern Conference. So,
I, I was
shout
gonna.
out Cam Johnson, man.
I was about to
Like,
ask you. Cam Johnson is obviously one of those players that it's consistently being brought up in trade talks. What do you think the Brooklyn Nets should do with him? Do you think they should just keep him and see what he be? I mean, I feel like we know what he is. We know what he probably is going to be for the rest of his career. Do you think they should trade him and get some assets, or do you think they should just stick it out with him and see what can come of that roster?
Uh, I would trade him.
Yeah, me too.
I would trade D'Lo. I would trade D'Lo and Cam Johnson just because I think they're aging, and I think this is the maximum value you're gonna get.
Hmm.
Which is like I hate to say that, but like where like you said that just because you have $60 million in cap room, you have a lot of picks for the next couple of years, and like you don't really know like you need to figure out a direction for your team. Like you
Right.
either need to draft a franchise player or you need to burn it all down. And I think the Nets are kind of playing in between. Like I don't know, they might trade all three of these guys. I don't think any of them are untouchable, but
No.
um, I think that's an interesting question. I would definitely lean towards trade though. I think you need to get as many assets as possible. But yeah, maybe for some future picks or a superstar. But to give you guys a little supporting cast snapshot, they have all those rising draft prospects that they just recently picked up.
Yep.
Traore, Danny Wolf. They have some guys that are going to be able to get a ton of playing time, and they're going to be able to sign some guys agency. We haven't about free agency a lot this year, obviously, because we've been talking about the season. But now that it's the off season, the Nets have some of the most money in the NBA, and I think not a lot of don't expect a superstar to want to go there just because it's not going to appeal to them and really the roster that they're trying to build. But I do think they'll find some great veteran guys or some guys that cheaper deals who will be able to contribute in a way that's beneficial to the Nets. And I think ultimately there's not an issue. I forget the minimum, but they have to spend it's 50%. So you have to spend at least half of your remaining cap. They have to spend at least 30 million,
Mm.
which is a lot. So
Yeah.
you definitely look for the Nets to be signing some guys, but in terms of who's helping those three kind of franchise players right now, it's all of those draft picks and then any guys that they sign, right? They got rid of Dorian Finney, they got Daron Sharp, they got Claxton. I don't even know who would start, bro. Now that you said that, I think it's gonna be D'Lo and Cam Thomas, Cam Johnson.
Hmm.
I don't know if they're gonna start their rookies, bro. Maybe Danny Wolf. I don't
Yeah,
know.
that's what I was about. Like, it's tough for them because they had, I think we didn't even bring it up. 5 first round pick. I think you brought it up earlier. I was a little surprised that they didn't try to trade one of those. Especially one of those lower ones. Maybe try to get, I don't know, another more
Yeah,
more more
yeah,
capital
different
in the
player.
next draft, or maybe get another player. I don't know. It was because obviously you're kind of betting on one of these 5 rookies to have a great year, which I mean is very likely, but just with the type of team that they have, like you said earlier, they have no real direction. They don't really know. It's kind of like they're just like, all right, we're gonna put these people out here, see what they can do, all right, and make adjustments from there. But they don't have, besides those 3 players that you said about, you talked about earlier, they don't really have someone that is like a solidified starter. So like you said, their
Yeah, no,
starting
for sure.
lineup is gonna be
Musical
it's
chairs.
music. Yeah, like you said earlier about the Pels, it's gonna be moving people around pretty much all season. So I couldn't tell you who they're. You said Claxton,
Okay.
right? You said Claxton.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
Claxton. Uh, yeah, Sharp maybe.
Sharp.
But
Yeah, maybe.
so the reason that I love how you brought that up though, because I have that in my notes for their offseason goals is they need to use the number 8 pick to maneuver. And
Mm,
this was earlier because we didn't do this pod. This was supposed to come out a little earlier, but still they didn't use the number 8 pick.
no.
And like, there's nothing wrong with taking Igor Denham, but I think that like if you tell me, hey, I've got the number 8 pick for you, that has a lot more value than hey, I've got Igor Denham for you.
Right.
You know what
Right.
I'm saying? I'm
Yeah. Yeah.
like, I'm
Yeah.
like, so when I saw that, I was like, interesting, because it was funny. I was going to talk to you about it before that happened, obviously,
Right.
but you just brought it up that they didn't trade anybody, and that was something that I had that they needed to do is trade some picks, get either a player back or future picks back, right? Because
Right.
I think future picks to the Nets are probably more valuable. They could have traded the first round, the 27th pick to somebody who needs that pick today,
Mm-hmm.
and then get something in 2027, 2028
Right.
in the first round. And
Yep.
like they're not going to be hurt. It's 2 years away,
Yeah.
So I think they missed the ball on that. It's kind of unfortunate because like I just brought up, I think I gave you great comments. Like oh, we have the number 8 pick to offer you sounds a lot different than, oh, we got Igor Denim to
Yeah,
offer you. It's like, ooh, like I don't know because I
yeah.
haven't seen,
Seeing
yeah,
what
I
he can
haven't
be,
seen
but
him. Yeah,
an eighth pick is a eighth pick. It's a lottery pick.
I'm
You can
like,
do so much with that.
man.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, so I did see on Twitter that the Nets fans were kind of pissed about that, and I'm glad you brought that up because I understand how. What's the point of hoarding it if you're not going to use the assets like in its fullest way? Obviously, use some of your draft picks. I think Nolan Traore was the best pick, but
right.
Danny Wolf too. But
Hmm.
like, yeah, man, they could have traded the number 8 pick. It held so much value,
So much
and
value.
now it doesn't really. To be
No.
honest, it's less valuable just because we know who the player is with that pick, and he's going to be on the Nets, and that's just that. So I'll start off with that. I did want to bring this up though. This kind of leads me into my next point. I think they need to start looking into absorbing contracts.
Hmm.
Now they need to take on some bad money.
Yep.
Like there's nothing wrong with that because they have the money to spend. It's an issue when a team takes on bad money and they have no money to spend.
Yep.
But since the Nets can take on bad money, they have some money to spend. They can use those players in a trade, and that's where it would be beneficial to the Nets to do so. Usually, you don't want to absorb bad contracts, right, CJ? Because we don't always have the money to pay them. But in this case, when you have the most cap in the NBA, I think they do have
Yeah.
cap in the
Yeah.
NBA.
100%.
It would make sense to get some bad contracts so you can use them in trades for the money to make sense. That's the only reason why you would want to do that. I had in my notes before Drew Holiday and Porzingis got traded, try to get those guys. They
Mm.
didn't.
Yeah.
So now, I don't know what they're really going to do. There's some bad still on the board in free agency, but I know it's going to give you go to the Nets, you get an opportunity to hoop, you get opportunities. That's only going to drive your value up, and so
Hmm.
it really makes sense for them to kind of lean into signing a guy who may be kind of overpaid in free agency. Nothing wrong with that. You can overpay him to play for the Nets, and try to bring your team some value and see what he can become in a trade piece. And I think
Yep.
that's ultimately where you'd use that type of thing, like that type of deal for. So I don't know. We'll have to see what they do. I don't know if they'll absorb like expiring contracts, but we'll see. They need to take a page out of Portland's book and even Atlanta a little bit, but
Yeah.
just like in terms of getting some bad money on
Yeah.
their book.
I was about to say it kind of reminds me of a lot of the offseason that the Rockets had a couple years ago when they signed Dylan Brooks and Fred Van Vliet. They signed them to bad contracts, right? But they were able to kind of play into their value. Were able to trade Dylan Brooks away for KD. You know what I mean? So they need to kind of take a page out of that book. Obviously
Right.
it's not good to absorb those type of contracts, but when you have the cap space for it, why not? You know what I mean? Like you can potentially get a player that obviously is not worth that money per se, but a type of
Good.
player that
Good.
has the
Yeah.
potential to be worth that money. And with a team like the Nets, where there's not, we keep talking about it, no real direction. If you could get a player like a veteran player or someone that's 6-7 years into their career, they can potentially bring you into winning some games. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
then
Winning. Yeah.
use
Winning
that
situation.
contract trade, like you said earlier. I mean, it's not a bad idea. Obviously, we haven't really looked at all the free agents and all like the people on books for the contracts, but that I would say that is probably what they have to do. You know what I mean? Take a page out of, like you said, Portland, Atlanta, and even Houston, like I brought up, and just kind of
Ben Simmons' contract.
yeah, yeah,
I'm like, what? Like, if you can do that, you can take on some bad,
right, exactly. That's why I'm like,
and do signing trades. So that was like the star one for me. But we'll see what happens this offseason. They still have the whole summer, so I'm not too worried about it. I wouldn't be shocked too if they trade one of their picks. Like,
mm,
it's just a drafted player, but
right,
it might be like a situation where they're like, oh wow, okay, like maybe this team really wants this player, and we have assets to be like, yeah, sure, just
go
give
for
us
it.
your picks later, and yeah, go for it because they're
Yeah,
gonna suck. But yeah, the last thing is this is a kind of ties into what we've been saying. The smart, the draft smart, absorb bad contracts. You got to sign somebody in free agency. If you
got to.
don't sign anybody in free agency who's decent, I think the Nets lost this season. I think in the summer they need to be using that cap to like figure out who wants to play there. The one thing I will say about having McCall Bridges on that team a couple years ago is like it did give them something to play for.
Mm-hmm.
Like somebody could go out there, get 20, 25 points with some, him and Cam Thomas were doing things. Now there's really not that type of guy on the Nets, and they need somebody else to come in and be able to score 20 points, fill up some seats in the damn arena. God dang, like sell some tickets,
Right.
and that's important, bro. Like you can't have Cam Johnson, D'Angelo Russell, and Cam Thomas be your franchise cornerstones. Like that's not. They're in a good spot cap wise, money wise, and they've gotten out of the dark, no doubt. Good job for that. But they need to move forward. And right now, for me, I think those three things, if they can sign a free agent who's decent, like you said, even if it's a bad contract, that goes into that. Absorb the contract. It doesn't matter if it's bad, like I just explained, and then maybe trade away some of your picks. That was before the draft, but now I don't know because their value goes down as soon as you draft them. So
Mm-hmm.
like I don't know. We'll just have to see how the picks, like the first round picks, turn out. I think they had a good second round as well. I don't know if you want to skim through that later,
Yeah.
but we'll probably go into it in another episode. But the Nets have so many draft picks, and I think it's like it's like a hoarding situation, kind of like the Thunder. I think they're taking the page out of the Thunder's book a little bit in terms of what they're doing with the draft. Is like somebody's gonna hit if
Mm-hmm.
we can just get a lot of first round draft picks, some in the second round, a lot of first round draft picks, some in the second round. Like
Yeah.
they're gonna have some players that hit. So for me, sitting with $60 million in cap, you got to spend half. Make sure you go out, sign somebody. If that means absorbing bad contracts, great. I wanted them to make a move on draft. They didn't. Oh well. I think they're in full rebuild mode right now.
Yep.
They're kind of wielding their next core and their future. I think the East is wide open, but team next year. Um, like I said, man, the Celtics just recently got Anthony Simons, so uh, I would say they're better now. Whenever Tatum comes back, it's going to be tough. I think the Nets are. If you're a Brooklyn Nets fan, I feel for you, but you guys are going to have to wait some years. I think
Yeah.
this is going to be a long, a 3 to 5 year thing. So
Yep.
just buckle up, man. Buckle up for sure.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know if you have anything else to add, but like,
Nah, bro.
yeah,
You said it perfectly. Like I said, that my main thing was just trading one of those
draft.
picks, man.
Yeah, the
That
draft.
was
I know.
huge. I feel like that was where they really missed the ball
I
right there,
know.
because that eighth pick holds a lot of value. And like you said, once you draft that player, that the value of that goes down depending on, obviously we don't know what any
What
of these,
people think.
yeah,
Yeah,
we
the
we don't
sentiment.
we don't know what any of these players are going to become, so I don't want to just, talk down all of them, but you could have potentially gotten more assets for your future, which at this point I feel like is more valuable for y'all, or you could potentially have gotten a player that is a really decent player that could kind of have been, not your cornerstone per se, but someone that could have, at least like I said earlier, helped you win some games. You know what I mean? Because more than likely they're gonna be bad for this upcoming season. We talked about it.
Dude, they're gonna be
They're
bad.
gonna be bad. So
They need to be bad. No, CJ, they need to be bad,
yeah,
bro. If they're good and they don't have draft picks, like
yeah,
it's chalk. Like they need to be bad. They
yep.
need to get a franchise cornerstone.
hmm They got to, man.
Like
That's what they're
the
missing.
Nets. I think the Nets really haven't had that since like a Jason Kidd, and this isn't even like this is New Jersey.
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't even say. I would even argue like the Brooklyn Nets haven't had a franchise superstar.
No, I mean,
Like I
maybe
don't count
maybe
Durant and all
D'Lo
that.
when his first tenure there, but even then,
Maybe, yeah, maybe.
maybe. I
That was
mean, that
probably
was,
like that was the person I was thinking of too. Like he was the last one to like really be getting to it.
yeah. I mean, obviously, besides getting KD and Harden and Kyrie,
Harden,
but
yeah.
that we saw what that turned into. So they're in, like, they have the potential with the amount of money they have to be able to make splashes like that, but when it doesn't work, we kind of seen what that has turned into. So they've done that twice already, mind you, since being in Brooklyn, which has not been a long time. So I think that's the thing, they're trying to figure it out. But yeah, that like I said, trading that draft pick was something I wish they would have done, because they could have been in a lot better position than what they are now, in my eyes.
All right, bro. 100%. Hey, man, you know, this one's been long, but you got anything for the lovely ladies and gentlemen that be watching? Man, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe.
No, yeah. Appreciate y'all for watching this episode of Three Man Weave. This was a little bit longer one, but we wanted to give y'all an
The draft, yeah.
in depth talks about all these players that are drafting. You know, the future of the NBA, future of the league. Super excited to see what all these players can turn into, and you know what their what they can provide for the teams that bet on
Future
them.
holds.
Yeah. So, yeah, nothing else for me, man. Appreciate y'all, and thunder up.
Under up, baby. Yeah, LA forever, man.
Yes, sir.
Peace. Three
Peace. We'll
man,
see
three
y'all next
man.
time, man. Yes, sir.